This year marks the 75th anniversary of the creation of Batman. Batman is a superhero alter ego adopted by fictional billionaire Bruce Wayne in the DC Comics. Bruce is motivated to assume this identity to fight the restless crime plaguing Gotham City, the same crime he loses his parents to when he's a very young child. The rights to the Batman franchise solely belong to DC Comics. However, many representations exist due to the lending and leasing of their copyright. These include TV series, both regular and animated, movies, and even live stage show. Over this 75-year span, we have witnessed a significant change, or evolution if you like, in the appearance and change in the character of Batman. Today we'll show you how Batman came to be and the changes he has undergone, ranging from specifically to do with the mask, Hollywood portrayals, actors who've portrayed him in the movies, and the various versions of his most essential tool, the Batmobile. Without further ado, let us begin. Please enjoy.
To get to that 75-year point, we have to go back to the very beginning, back to 1939. Batman was created by two men. On the left is Bob Kane. He was actually the artist that came up with the original concept of Batman. And on the right is his ghostwriter, technically, Bill Finger. Up until recent years, actually, Bob Kane has been credited as the sole creator of Batman. But actually, during the entire process, Bill Finger was actually refining the character with him and working on the stories all the way up until the 70s, until he eventually ended up dying a sad, lonesome death because he felt that his creative talent went wasted because he was not properly credited to his work. The original concept of Batman is actually much different from what we know today. I'm going to click and we're going to see a picture. As you can see, completely different from what we know now. It was based heavily on Superman at the time, who was very popular. He took off immediately back in 1938 in the Action Comics. So the company that ended up becoming DC Comics, they did an open call. They were looking for new superheroes because they realized that is something that's going to be the future. That's popular. It's selling. So Bob Kane, he did the basic design here. He gave Batman initially actual bat wings. He gave him a bright popping uniform because it was inspired by Superman. And he called his friend over, Bill Finger, to come in and help him with it, to see what he thought about it. And the deal was that Bill Finger completely shot it down. He told him that it's too bright and colorful. It's not a good design. It looks silly. Because really, that looks like Mr. Incredible from Disney's The Incredible. Not exactly the guy that strikes fear in our hearts nowadays. So they refined it. And this was the actual first design of Batman that most people are familiar with nowadays. He told him to tone down the colors, make it darker so he's more mysterious. He told him to add gloves because he's a vigilante. And a vigilante would not want to go and leave fingerprints at a crime scene. He told him that we should go and change to the little domino mask he had around his eyes and change it instead to a cow to conceal his face. And this is how we got the iconic Batman that we know today. And in 1939, in May, we got Detective Comics #1, which is right there in the center. And it was only 10 cents because that was a bargain back then. Compared to about, what, $5 today for a comic book? And then, as time went on, the two, they formed their own dynamic duo, bouncing ideas back and forth. Things like Robin were created. Because early on, Batman, he would just go and he would solve the crime, but you wouldn't understand how he solved it. He would just be a man that would swoop in mysteriously, and he would just beat people up, since that's sold. But they realized early on that they needed some kind of thing to bounce off of Batman, to go and actually help the reader understand how did he come to this conclusion, how did he realize the bad guys are going to be at 5th and Main at 3 in the morning stealing diamonds. So they created Robin as a result of that, because they based Batman originally off of characters like the Phantom and Sherlock Holmes, and they decided that if you had somebody like a Watson to go and bounce these things around, it would help go and be a self-insert for the reader and actually make it more capable for them to understand what's going on through the head of this Batman. And it took off. It was a very roaring success. Because of this popularity of Robin, it actually started what we know as the sidekicks now. Before then, these heroes were lonesome. They didn't have somebody tagging along or anything like that. It was just solo stories. But because Robin was young and readers could relate to him, it ended up having it where the young kids, they loved it and they wanted more. So other superheroes came and had sidekicks in, like Superboy or Aqualad or whatever story you might be familiar with. They ended up getting a young Ward because of that. And that wasn't the only thing they created. It wouldn't be Batman without those iconic villains. Right here is the 6 most common ones that we've always seen, always in some form of media, that Bill Finger, and Bob Kane created together. And we're just going to take a quick look at some of them, starting with the Riddler. The Riddler, his deal is that he's highly intelligent and he has to prove it to the world. He has to go and prove that he's superior to all other people. And he constantly engages Batman in Gotham City in tests of intelligence. And usually he'll leave Riddler trophies or something like that to go, because he's compulsive. He has to let people know that it's him. And actually, it's a sign, it's a reflection of Batman. Batman has something known in the industry as Bat Prep. If you give Batman at least an hour in advance, odds are the writer's going to figure out a way to pull it out of the rear to have him win the day. He's got the greatest plot armor in the world. And these two constantly match wits, but Batman always succeeds past him. Next we're going to go to Two-Face. The deal with him was that he was a district attorney. He fought for the law in the courtrooms while Batman fought in the streets. Until one day he tried to prosecute a mob boss, and they splashed acid on his face, and it psychologically traumatized him. And he developed a dual identity then, and became the character Two-Face there. Sometimes he'll be psychotic and rage-inducing, most of the time actually now. But other times he'll actually gain lucidity and understand his actions, what's going on. And in that case, Batman, he lives a dual life. He's Bruce Wayne, and he's Batman. He's constantly fighting to figure out which side he wants to go on and be dominant. But he never sinks to this level where he finally gives in and lets one side of his persona win. The Penguin, Oswald Cobblepot. The deal with him is that he was born into a rich family just like Batman. But because he was physically deformed and kind of not the best looking guy. The deal with him was that he got bullied a lot, and he decided he'd fight back about it. And he used his wealth to obtain power because at an early age he realized he liked power. And with that, he used his influence for the negative side of life. He financed his own gang. He started to become a criminal kingpin in the underworld. In a sense, what if the Batman was actually Bruce Wayne's business handle? Just a 6-foot-tall guy walking in and trying to intimidate people in business meetings, maybe buying out the cops to go and make a war on crime like that. It's a different shade of what could have been. Here's the Scarecrow. The way he operates is that he uses fear because he used to be a psychologist and he was fascinated by the concept of fear in humans. It's the way he gets off, basically. And Batman, he fights and he uses fear. Fear is his greatest weapon. In Batman's own words, criminals are a cowardly and superstitious lot. So in a sense, these two aren't all that different, except for Scarecrow actually uses toxins and gases and drugs and whatnot to induce it, while Batman's dressed in leather and jumping rooftop to rooftop, punching people in the face at night. Here's Bane, technically the most recent addition, as he was added in the 90s. And he actually had a very notable comic, which is highlighted right here, Nightfall. In his introduction, he was smart enough to figure out who Batman was. He actually put 2 and 2 together to realize, there's this super rich guy that's never around nighttime, and here's this guy that's running around at nighttime with jet planes, has napalm in his pocket and stuff like that. So he actually went to the Batcave, and he engaged Batman. And the deal was, he went to send a message. So he beat Batman. He left him on the floor. He grabbed him, picked him up and lifted him. Then he snapped his back over his knee and left Batman there to die with a broken back, to send a message. I have beat the Bat. I am the superior. I have done what none of you people have done in about 60 years of comics. And Batman, he's not crazy strong like that or super buff, but he trains to physical peak. And the case with him is that he also goes, and on occasion he will maim his opponents. He has no qualms about breaking somebody's arm or something to make them actually stop and consider sending the message that I am Batman. If you create crime or havoc in my city, I will find you, I will hurt you, and others will know not to do this. Most importantly and most notable of all, the Joker. The Joker is a very interesting character since basically from the very beginning he's been Batman's foil. He's been there designed to go and counter Batman in pretty much every way possible. Usually, depending on the writer or artist, he can match him in intelligence, he can match him in speed, he can match him in physical combat, even though he's really just a tall, lanky guy that fell into a vat of chemicals. The deal with him is that back in 1987 or so, there was this comic called The Killing Joke, and it set up his backstory, and it also changed Batman's comics forever, since it helped set the dark, gritty tone that ended up kicking off the movies and whatnot that came after it. The deal was that he had the idea that all it took was just one simple day, one bad day to drive a sane man to lunacy. So he set up an elaborate scheme to prove this, and at the end of the story, he had pointed to Batman and said that you've had a bad day, haven't you? And talked about how he's lying around and beating people up at night, and something had to cause this trauma to make him into the man that he is. In the case of the Joker, he has many different backstories. The most common accepted and reinforced by this story here, though, is that he was a man named Jack Napier. Jack was laid off from his job at a chemical plant. His wife was pregnant. He had no money, and he took a job with the mob. The deal there was that he needed the money to help support his new child coming into the world. You can relate to that, because if you love something, you're willing to go to any length to take care of it. And the deal there was that right before the break-in, where he offered to help him, his wife was in the hospital getting ready to give birth, and she died during childbirth. This devastated Napier. And the deal there was that he tried to back out at the last minute, but the mob told him they were going to kill him if he did. So he had to go through with it against his will. They dressed him in a costume and they threw him in there with them to act as a decoy. Batman appears. He ends up knocking Napier into a vat of acid. It bleaches his skin white. Due to all the trauma that that man had in that one day, it snapped him. It created the supervillain we know today as the Joker. All it took was just one bad day to make him into the man that he is. And Batman created him, his own worst enemy. I'm going to show a video here that showcases the sanity and humanity of Batman, where he sees that his friend Jim Gordon, Commissioner Gordon to some of you, ended up basically nearly dying during one of their routine cop runs. And it pretty much helps sets the stage that makes him endearing in all these comics and movies and TV shows later on.
Master Bruce? All right, then. I'm tired, Alfred. I shouldn't wonder. You've taken your healing today. I can't recall when you last slept. Okay, body can be dealt with. But a weary spirit, that's something else. Sometimes, old friend, I wonder if we're really doing any good out there. How can you doubt it? I feel saved. I'm closing the road to justice. I put out a few fires, yes. Won a few battles. But the war goes on, Alfred. On and on. You have it, Alfred? Of course, sir.
You seem quieter than usual tonight.
Every year I come here, I wonder if it should be the last time. I should put the past behind me. Try to lead a normal life.
Santayana says that those who forget the past are condemned to repeat it.
He also said a fanatic is someone who redoubles his efforts while losing sight of his goal.
Looks like the fat lady just sunk, Jimmy. Where's the information? You should see this. Commissioner? Oh my God.
all is said and done, how much good have I accomplished? They sell t-shirts of me. I become a cliche. More good for the tourist trade in the streets.
This city would fall apart without you.
Maybe. Maybe not. When you look too long into the abyss looks back through you. Maybe it's time for Batman to return to the night that spawned him, before anyone else gets hurt.
Over the years, Hollywood has really adapted the characters and the storyline of Batman, making it not only a comic book superhero, but turning it into a franchise. For this portion of our speech, I'm going to be focusing on the actors in the movies made. There's been a total of 9 live-action Batman movies, starting with the first one made in 1943. And the 10th one is set to be in theaters summer 2016. First, you have Lewis Wilson. He was the very first Batman. He played him in 1943, and this movie came out during the height of World War II, and it had a lot of patriotic innuendos during the movie and a lot of anti-German and anti-Japanese slang. Next, you have Robert Laird, played in 1943 in Batman and Robin. Next, you have the famous Adam West. He actually played Batman in a television series, but the TV series was so popular that it was made into a movie, and he played him in 1966. Next, you have Michael Keaton. He played him in 1989 and 1992 in Batman and Batman and Robin. Val Kilmer played Batman in 1995 in Batman Forever. George Clooney, he played him in 1997 in Batman and Robin. Now, he's probably one of the most famous people who played him, but the movie is often regarded as one of the worst movies ever made and the worst Batman movie ever made. It had a star-studded cast, but it was just a terrible movie. Next, you have Christian Bale, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys are familiar with him. He was the Batman that played him in the Dark Knight series, starting in 2005 with Batman Begins, and ending in 2012 with Dark Knight Rises. And lastly, you have Ben Affleck, who was set to play in 2016 in Superman vs. Batman: Dawn of Justice. Now, I have a quick video of the top Batman's worst of those.
So far, you've been informed about the history of Batman and all the people who have played as Batman in movies and other things. But another important thing you should know is all the suits that Batman wore. There are a lot of different suits, well over 50, but I narrowed them down to the most important and weird. When Batman appeared in Detective Comics 27, he had purple gloves, a bulletproof vest, and a round buckle belt. Then in Detective Comics 30, he had longer gaits and gloves. He was a lot more blue, and he had sharper, pointed ears. In the Batman and Robin serial, he had floppy ears, and they were really flimsy, and he had a long snout. Before I show you the cooler Batsuits, I want to show you the really weird ones. First, we have the Jungle Batman with Robin, then the Rainbow Batman, and an alien Batman from Xeronon. Azrael took over bat duties for a short period of time, and he added a lot of stuff to the suit, including a bat signal chest light, a cape with a series of armored plates, and even, and I quote, razor sharp arm gauntlets with grappling hooks and rapid fire battering launchers. Lastly, there's a more futuristic Batman who's just all black, no cape, and has a red logo. Now this is Adam West, and he was a lot more blue, but I don't think he was as cool as the Rainbow Batman. And underneath is a cartoon version of Adam West. In Batman Year One, he was a lot darker, just gray and black. When Tim Burton made the movie Batman, he made it a lot more darker, mostly just black, but he added the yellow oval around the bat. And he also added a grapple gun. This suit is actually the template for future bat suits, as you can see in this movie, in Batman Returns. He is a lot similar, but the abs and chest look a lot less natural. In Batman the Animated Series, he had a gray suit with an alternating black or blue. The series was really popular and actually won an Emmy Award. In June 1995, in Batman Forever, there are two different suits. First is the Panther suit, which is just all black with the yellow oval and with the controversial nipples. And then there's the Sonar suit, which is made of metallic silver and has the bat logo on it, without the yellow oval. And in Batman and Robin, featuring George Clooney, there's also two suits. One is just blue, and the Arctic one has silver patches. Now into the 21st century. In Batman Begins, the suit is a lot darker, except his belt. And 3 years later was the Dark Knight, and he was a lot more armored and defined, but still very dark. Then the Dark Knight Rises, the suit was more or less similar to the Dark Knight. Now we're waiting for Ben Affleck to show up in Man of Steel in 2016. And a fun fact is, before Batman ever wore his bat suit, and before all that, his dad, Thomas Wayne, had actually worn a bat-themed costume to a masquerade.
Batman knew how to get around the city pretty well, Gotham. He had to use many different ways to get around: on foot, the bat cycle, and then in the cartoons he also had jets and other cool vehicles like that. I want to talk about the Batmobile and some of the more important ones or interesting ones in my opinion. The first one, this was the first one that was considered the official Batmobile, but before that, Batman used just really nice sports cars, and he would just drive around those. So as this is the first one, you notice there's no wings, there's no nose or really bat-like features except for on the ornament on top of the hood. And this was in 1939, and this car was based off the Accord 812. I don't know if anyone here knows that, but it was one of the nicer sport cars at that time with the V8 engine, so it was pretty quick. And it gave out 185 horsepower. Also, if you notice, it had a long front end, so Batman installed a battering ram in it, so you could just go right through buildings and such. In one of the Detective comics on the front that was shown earlier, you could see the car going through the wall. I don't know if anyone recalls that. Next is this card that they wanted to change it from the first one so it was more darker, more intimidating, and more classier, as it sort of reminds you of maybe like a Corvette or something. So it's more of a classier sports car. It also had a V8 engine, just as the previous one. This one totally changed from the one before. They wanted it to make it look more as a bat. As you can notice, it sort of looks like it has a rib cage, and it has more fins, and it's darker. This, like I said, made it more look like a bat. It made it have like natural look. And then here in 2005, the Tumbler was introduced. This was in Batman Begins, which was a new series to the Batman movies. This was pretty much more tank-like, heavy-duty. It weighed in at 2.5 tons, I believe, but it was still fairly quick. It would go 0-60 in under 6 seconds. This car had a lot of features to it, such as heavy armored plates all around it, and it could go into attack mode, where in the movie Batman would lay down and move around and make more stricter maneuvers, I would say. Tighter turns and such things like that. Next, these are the Park Brothers. I don't know if you guys are familiar with them. They have a shop here on Aurora Road in between Croton and Wickham. It's here in Melbourne, Florida, right by the Gallup High School. They created a replica of the Tumbler, and it's pretty cool and it's quick, but not as like they say it's supposed to be and such. But I just wanted to show like a quick little video of the replica they made. If you notice, it has cameras all around it also. So like when you're sitting in there, there's screens around where you can see behind you to the side, because you don't have that much good view. For 2016, this is the Batmobile that's supposed to be shown. You can't see it that well because they're still like working on it and such, but it's supposed to be almost like the Tumbler, but sleeker and slimmer and faster, I would say.
In conclusion, we have shown you how Batman has begun in comic